Wanna talk? So let's talk. Yeah. Talk. You wanna talk? You gotta talk, you need to talk. News talk.
I talk, you talk to Solomon. I talk, you talk to Solomon. Yeah, let's talk to Solomon. Talk to Solomon.
You gotta talk, you wanna talk.
We face a pivotal election. All elections are substantial. Some say the oncoming one is always the most substantial. That may be true, I don't know. But I would look at this election as saying either we are going to go far left or we're not going to go far left, to honor Alan Keyes' perspective. But I don't want to go far left. I don't want shared prosperity. I don't want socialism and communism and Marxism. I don't want godlessness and amorality, if not immorality. And so the question is, can a new regime, as Brent would say, a new administration, be subject to the impact, the influence, the advice, the admonishments of involved people, we the people? Alan?
Well, a couple of things. I think that the idea of listening to, it's part of the problem I have now with these words all these people say. I hear Obama say shared prosperity, and then I look at what's going on and what has gone on pretty much everywhere in the world where any form of socialism has been comprehensively implemented. And that's misery, not prosperity. You don't get prosperity from socialism. End of sentence. So what you're sharing is the misery, unless, of course, I mean, there's shared prosperity among the little clique of elites who live high on the hog while everybody else is suffering. Hey, yeah, well, if you're willing to think that that's shared prosperity, go his way, okay? Because that doesn't make any sense, but go his way. But that's what we're really talking about here. And look at what has happened over the course of the last several years. As we have gone down this road where I think partly because we're under attack by a sort of leftist cabal, and partly in the financial sense, and partly because we stupidly elected this socialist communist to the White House, we have been engaged in an experiment to see whether this socialist stuff is going to do us any good. And we're nearly bankrupt, and we've had extraordinarily high and consistent unemployment. And we're watching as the productive capacity of the country suffers, and as the middle class shrinks, and as the small businesses dry up, and as the jobs disappear. And we got this person talking about shared prosperity. What la-la land is he living in? Well, it's not la-la land. It's because he really doesn't care, you see. Neither do a whole bunch of them. They'll say whatever words they think will gull people into accepting further life with their control dominating our lives, and that's the only thing that matters. But on the other hand, Stan, I wish I could in any way sanction the notion that what's offered us in November is some kind of choice. But it's just not. It's not. Romney in Massachusetts, go down the factual business that he conducted. And I know he runs around now trying to pretend, I didn't recommend it for the country. That's not true, by the way. He did. And he was taking advice from some of the same people, exactly the same people in some cases, that Obama took advice from to come up with Obamacare, had features that he showed the way to these socialists what they wanted to do. Okay? So don't tell me this is a choice. It's not a choice in those terms. We are dealing with socialists here. And to tell me that there's a difference between the Keynesian socialists and the Marxist socialists, yeah, one of them is going to rouse more resistance because it smells worse and is uglier and is more immediately apparent that it's killing you. It's like that poison that gets to work right away and fills your stomach with pains and makes you want to throw up all over the place. That's the way we all feel now in the presence of the Obama administration. But then there's the poison that's nicely buffered and sugar-coated and moderated, so it gets into your system and in a somewhat a longer space of time kills you more surely because you don't react fast enough to get rid of it. And so this is a choice, y'all. Come on. Have we lost our minds? John Maynard Keynes was a socialist, okay? And the implementation of these stimulus policies, these government spending equals jobs lies, is what's killing us and bankrupting our country. And Mitt Romney, for all his chatter now that he wants to get to the White House, puts such policies into play and effect. That's who he is. And I don't believe his lies. So you can believe him if you want. I don't think he's changed. I think he's the same guy doing exactly to the nation what he did in Massachusetts, talking out of one side of his mouth while he walks in another direction. And then we said, well, we'll hold his feet to the fire. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're going to have, after doing it for the last, what is it now, 88, 98, 2008, it's over 20 years, we have basically let this elitist faction get away with this. Oh, and then we're going to hold their feet to fire. And then we're going to hold their feet to fire. It's always not the right person, not the conservative person, not the one who's really going to do what's necessary to roll back the spending, roll back the increase in government size, roll back the enormous debt, and give back control of the money to the people of this country. No, we won't elect somebody like that. We'll elect somebody who's a proven socialist, and then we'll hold his feet to the fire after having demonstrated that we haven't got the guts to stand aside when we realize that we're being treated like idiots. You really think that's going to increase our credibility for holding feet to the fire? You know, 2010, you elect Tea Party freshmen. Paul Ryan is one of the leaders who twist their arm upside their head to get them to vote for stimulus and debt ceiling increases and all of this sort of stuff. And then I'm supposed to believe that he's going to save us from those very things? You've got to be kidding me, right? This doesn't make sense. And to believe that people who go along with this are then going to have the credibility to hold, oh, if you don't listen to what we say, then we'll do exactly what we just did. And next time around, you can bring up the boogeyman of letting somebody like Obama back into power, and we'll fall into line because we're jerks. Okay. If we think that builds credibility, if we think that's going to make these elitist socialists fear us, then that's exactly the right strategy. They're going to take us really seriously when we say like King Lear, oh, I don't know what I'll do, but I'll do and I'll do and I'll do. What a fool he looked like in the play, if you all remember it. Because unless you can deliver on your toughness, unless you are willing to stand firm against the lies and the deceit, instead of being treated like gullible people who've lost their common sense, nobody's going to take you seriously. They'll just say, yeah, we manipulated them last time, and we can do it again. And they'll sit there and say, well, we got no choice. We got to go this way. It doesn't matter what he did. I don't want to hear about the record. Oh, would you shut up, please? Why do you keep saying that when we have no choice? Don't remind us that the reason we have no choice is that we didn't listen to you 10 years ago, and 5 years ago, and 3 years ago, and 2 years ago, and instead let this come upon us again. Don't remember that. Don't remind us of that. See, because we like being boxed into this corner and then pretending we're going to hold somebody's feet to the fire. I'm sorry, Stan. It doesn't work for me. I mean, I can't do it. I'm constitutionally incapable of looking at something that's illogical and pretending that it makes sense.
Let me ask you this question, Alan. Did you see in any of the primary results, whether it was Ted Cruz in Texas or Richard Murdoch in Indiana or others, did you see any signs that you found encouraging? Well, yes, but it confirms what I deeply believe, Stan. You see, I think that there's a good, solid, potentially governing plurality, I call it, because the idea of majority isn't needed in our politics. And when they say it's a majority, they lie. You need to turn out a good, solid plurality that then looks like a majority in the election, right? Because of the people who turn out. And that exists on a solid conservative basis. And as a result, we would have a country that would get back on track, that would have the leadership we need, if that solid conservative plurality stopped being treated like fools and voting for a party label that doesn't represent them. Vote for individuals, yes. Vote for the ones who really stand for something. I don't care what label they wear. Vote for them, yes. But because they are following the right course. This notion that, by the way, final point. Can we take people like that? We elect them to Congress. Did this in 2010, too.
But then 2/3 of the people who got elected with the Tea Party backing in 2010 then proceeded to get their arms twisted upside the back of their head and brainwashed into supporting a lot of stuff because they were saying, well, we got to govern now, and we've got to be mature, and so forth. That's the way these elitist faction types sell people on helping to consolidate the continued government domination of our society so they can get and keep power for themselves, even though their constituents don't want it. And a lot of folks, listen, how many times can we do that, Stan? When we know that they're going to go to Washington, and if they could do that arm twisting when a GOP guy wasn't sitting in the White House, how much more effective do you think it'll be when they're controlling the enormous assets that the executive branch represents? So I look at it, and I will still tell you, as long as one is accepting this paradigm that allows us to be manipulated in this way, and I'm writing this piece, as I say, for Friday, win or lose. I have a piece up now that talks about what happens if the Romney ticket loses. They're setting the Tea Party up to take the fall, even though the ticket doesn't represent the Tea Party agenda at all, either one of them. And then if there's a victory, then you're set up to have the word conservative hollowed out, to have it filled with this Romneyite socialist content, and to sit by the way, while in spite of the rhetoric, the Republican elite establishment then proceeds to shove gay marriage and stuff down the throat of this country. And this is going to be an improvement, I wonder, because I think a lot of the people good folks that we'll send into Congress in an environment like that will be turned wrong. And final point. Did you notice that a lot of the steps they took under the Obama era were steps that actually make the Congress less relevant? Handing off to the executive branch all kinds of prerogatives to raise the debt ceiling and so forth that don't function under anything but, sort of a reactionary, negative congressional oversight. The fact that the House of Representatives is supposed to initiate the money bills and that the initiative is to remain in the hands of the representatives of the people, no longer true. Super committees and all this stuff, so things get done behind the scenes and then served up like we were some kind of ancient Spartan serfs or something, listening to the proposals of our masters. That's not how our Constitution is supposed to work, but that's how they've set it up. And finally, Justice Roberts unleashing the taxing power so everybody in this country can be scared to death that if they don't do what they're told, the government can assault their livelihood in violation of their constitutional rights and get away with it, because when the taxing power is in question, none of that stuff applies. Don't you see what we're being set up for, y'all? So I think that you got to think this whole thing through. The situation is such that, yeah, there's some relief out there in the gloom, but until and unless the people who are conservative and really committed to maintaining the republic stop playing in the rigged casino and start building a politics that really reflects who they are, this country's not going to turn around.
All right, Brent, I will let you respond.
I agree 100% with everything Alan said. Alan is speaking out of my heart right now, which is that what most concerned me is what he said near the end there about how the executive branch is very, very rapidly taking on more power. Congress is divesting itself of power, which, by the way, is unconstitutional and therefore invalid and therefore illegal. In other words, we have more and more a criminal government. We have people in the executive, in the legislative, in the judicial branch that are not obeying the supreme law of the land and the limitations imposed by the Constitution. That means those people are outlaws. That means they are thugs. They are criminals. That when Judge Roberts sat there and called Obamacare mandate a tax, he used authority. When Obama circumvents Congress to pass an executive order that says we're not going to deport people who are violating the law, he usurped authority. When Congress says the debt ceiling will automatically go up if we don't decide in Congress to vote it down, they usurped authority. And that means we've got a bunch of thugs, a bunch of outlaws in the three branches of the federal government. And until we address that, I think everything else that we do is going to be more like wallpapering than anything else. Because if you have laws, criminals don't obey laws. Go up to a bank robber during a bank robbery and say, "Excuse me, sir, do you know that there's a law against robbing banks?" What do you think he's going to do? Thank you? No, he's going to probably shoot you and rob the bank anyway. So going and telling people things like what you're doing is wrong isn't going to address the fact. I think Alan makes an excellent point. My cherry on top of it is we got a bunch of thugs and we got to get them out, and we may have to get them out by force.
And the sad thing is, if I can add a point to that, look at what happened to Holder, Eric Holder, and what is still happening to him. I read something today that says ISSA is going to take him to court to get documents and so forth. Now, excuse me, y'all. It is quite obvious. We were talking about the border. We were talking about people being killed in Mexico. And we have a bunch of folks in the government came up with a scheme that actually put weapons in the hands of the bad guys so they could kill people, right? And then try to cover it up in all kinds of ways. And this is so obviously an impeachable offense, I don't know where to begin. And what does the supposed representative, the party supposedly represents the outraged people who want to stop it all, what do? They say go to court. Excuse me, the Constitution of the United States does not at the end of the day invest the courts with the power to oversee the executive. Don't we remember that? The Congress has that power. That's why they hold the impeachment power. So they can go over there and say, we accuse you of having violated the supreme law of the land, and you can't withhold documents. You can't withhold evidence. You can't withhold anything from us while we're judging whether or not that charge is to be leveled against you. And why don't they do it? Because they're gutless cowards, or because they're people who don't really want the Constitution's authority restored. I don't care what label they claim to wear. They're not acting according to what the integrity of the Constitution requires, and therefore I say they're not committed to that integrity, no matter what they say in their speeches. And we still have a bunch of people around the country thinking, well, we can't have Obama, he's so bad. And I'm thinking, look, you can't have any of this. It's any of it so bad that it ends your liberty. So you have got to stop thinking that this phony choice is going to get you anywhere and start thinking like a real American. You know, if I don't see what's for real, what's real equality, then I start a way of doing it myself so I get what I need. It's called free enterprise. Why can't we practice it in politics?
Chief?
Well, Alan is right, as always. And I would like to say that I wish Dr. Alan Keyes was our nominee, but he's not. He did mention one word, though, several times that struck a chord with me, and that word is start. So I feel like right now the game's on the line. Our star player's not available. Our choice is, do we start or do we stop? We have to start with where we are right now and then go forward. And my opinion is this next election, the Romney-Obama election, is not the war. It's just one of many battles we must fight and win and keep fighting them and keep winning until we restore our freedom and our Constitution the way it's supposed to be.
All right, and we have several other topics, but we don't have time to really develop them. So I'm going to get a closing comment from everyone. I'll start with you, Brent.
Well, I think that what we are facing now, okay, is a pattern. If you look over the last 20 years or so, you will see a pattern. Bill Clinton came into office, and Bill Clinton pushed the envelope of the constitutional limitations on government further than it had ever been pushed before. George W. Bush came into office, and so Clinton had done, and so he took the next step, and he pushed the envelope even further than Clinton had pushed it. Obama comes into office, and he sees what the other two have done, and he pushes the envelope even further. I think that until we can get some guts into Congress to push back, all you're going to see from the next president, whether it's Obama or Romney, is the same pattern. If they can get away with it, I can get away with even more. And this is what you do to children, by the way. Children push the envelope until you take them over your knee and you spank them. And they say, okay, I have a limit. Until we spank the president, until we hurt the president, it doesn't matter what party the president represents. We're going to get that envelope pushed further and further until the Constitution is a bare memory in the minds of freedom-loving people.
Well said, Brent. Chief?
I just want to know, Dr. Keyes, now that you've turned 30, are you getting a discount on your car insurance?
No, I actually just turned. I turned what we could call these days the reverse mortgage age, 62.
Alan, closing thoughts.
Well, I think people wonder. I have tried and tried and tried over the last several years to get folks to think ahead, to get them to look at it, to develop an alternative that could be implemented so we wouldn't be faced with this mess that we're now in. Folks didn't want to listen, were gulled, followed the GOP this is and that, and of course the whole thing was rigged. I think more and more people now realize the GOP primary was rigged. We're just seeing an open confession of elitist domination over the last little while, and now we're sort of stuck. And as I said to someone the other day, when you finally get to the point where you're making an argument to somebody that says, we got no choice but to vote for so-and-so, stop over the words, we've got no choice, because if you've got no choice, you've got no election. Don't we understand that? If you've got no choice but X, then there is no election. You don't have an election. Somebody's already rigged it. And that ought to wake us up. And even if you think to yourself, I got to do this and that, you know what we should be doing? It's what I'm trying to do. This is not a time to buy into the lies, buy into the rhetoric, and start pretending that these people who are bad are good. Okay, they're not any good. Their records prove it. And their willingness to go along with all this junk that has helped to destroy our Constitution and our country proves it. And so I think that whatever people think they're going to do, they need to be doing it, looking these guys in the face and saying, I'm not listening to a word you say. I know you're a liar. I know the position you've put me in. So if you read the outcome of the next election like it means I buy into your charade, you're mistaken. At the least we could do, that might even help to give us some serious credibility about holding their feet to the fire, which we don't have now. But that's, I think, something I think everybody needs to ponder. Because all of this rah-rah, rally round, so-and-so, this isn't working. I think it is necessary, and I've said it all along. I knew the moment would come when the American people would just be looking for the receptacle where they could vomit up the Obama faction. How can I get these people out of my system? Okay? That's a good mentality. Follow that mentality. But on the other hand, I think we had better wake up to the reality that what is going on here should have already been stopped. We can't do this anymore, ever, or our country is finished, dead, over with. And in that sense, I think the chief spirit is a good spirit. Whatever happens, we've got to look upon this as the beginning of that revolution in the American sense, where you turn things around and get them back where they belong. And that's what we're going to have to do.
Well said, Alan. Well said, Brent. Well said, Chief. And America, maybe it's time to have your say. You're going to have an opportunity in the next 84 days for this particular election to speak to be heard by, to make impact on thousands of people running for office. There is all kinds of ways for you to be heard, for you to be seen, for you to be felt, if you will, politically. And maybe it's time we start making that impact so that we build a crescendo that simply can't be ignored, and we won't let it be ignored. Thanks to everyone. Thanks to you. Good night, America.